But beneath the surface of this royal visit, a comedy of errors was spiraling into a romantic tragedy. Gruber, ever the romantic opportunist, had fallen for Princess Siri's sister, but he had lied, claiming to be a high-ranking officer. He wore Mikhail's uniform, a borrowed skin that felt tighter with every passing minute. As the dancers of Marami performed beneath the flickering torches, the lines between duty and desire blurred. Mikhail watched the Sultan's daughters, their movements a fluid language of grace. He felt a sharp pang of longing for Molly Wilson, who stood on the periphery of the gala, her duty keeping her at a distance. The night was shattered when Binghamton, fueled by jealousy and the lingering effects of a sedative, burst into the gala in a seaman's uniform, shouting about hula girls in air raid shelters. He had tried to frame Mikhail for a moral outrage, only to find himself the victim of his own delusions. The Sultan was insulted, the Admiral was outraged, and in the chaos, Ensign Parker found himself alone on the beach with Princess Siri. "Our worlds are oceans apart, Charles," Siri said, her voice a melody of sadness. "The ocean is what brought us together," Parker replied, his voice uncharacteristically steady. He took her hand, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Wah, I'm just an ensign from a small town. But when I look at you, I feel like I could command a fleet." Their kiss was a brief, stolen ember in the cold reality of war. It was a promise that could never be kept, a romance destined to be a memory of the South Seas. Chapter 4. The Ghost of PT 13. Superstition is the religion of the sailor. And on Taratupa, the legend of the jinxed boat, PT 13, hung over the lagoon like a shroud. A rumor began to circulate, fueled by Binghamton's malice, that the PT-73 was actually the ill-fated PT-13, a vessel that had lost 2 crews to the depths. Fear is a contagion. The men who had faced death with a laugh were now paralyzed by the thought of a ghost in the rigging. The morale of the crew plummeted. Even the stoic Mikhail felt the weight of the legend. "A boat is just wood and steel, Skip," Christopher argued, though his hands shook as he checked the fuel lines. But then came the sightings. Pale lights on the water. The sound of phantom engines. In the dead of night, Binghamton, in a fit of sadistic glee, had orchestrated a haunting to drive the men to request transfers. He wanted them gone, their records tarnished by cowardice. Mikhail knew he had to fight fire with fire, or rather, ghost with ghost. In a daring nocturnal operation, he and his men staged a return of the spirits. They used laughing gas, stolen from the dentist, and white sheets to turn the base into a psychological battlefield. The atmosphere became surreal, a gothic horror play performed in the tropics. Amidst the artificial fog and the echoing moans of the damned, Mikhail found Molly Wilson. She had seen through the ruse, but the danger was real. "Quentin, you're playing with fire," she warned him, her face illuminated by the eerie glow of the chemical mist. "I'm playing for their lives, Molly," he replied, his voice low. "If they believe they're jinxed, they're already dead. I have to give them their courage back." She reached out, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "You always give them everything, but who gives you what you need?" In the darkness, with the bass spiraling into a choreographed madness, Mikhail pulled her close. Their embrace was a desperate anchor in a sea of uncertainty. For a moment, the ruse was forgotten. There were no ghosts, no admirals, no war, only the heat of their breath and the frantic rhythm of their hearts. The haunting worked. Binghamton was terrified into a confession, his own superstitious mind turning against him. The jinx was broken, but the emotional toll remained. The crew had looked into the abyss, and they had seen that the true ghosts were the regrets they carried with them. Chapter 5. The Stolen Fortune of New Caledonia. The climax of their journey took them to the bustling, humid streets of New Caledonia. A payroll of $62,000, the lifeblood of the base, had been entrusted to Mikhail's crew. It was a king's ransom in unmarked bills, a temptation that Binghamton hoped would finally lead them to the brig. The heist was swift and professional. A girl with a birthmark on her ankle, a heart-shaped brand of destiny, had been the siren that led Ensign Parker into a trap. the money vanished into the labyrinthine alleys of the port city. The search for the stolen fortune became a frantic chase through gambling dens and darkened bars. Mikhail moved through the city with the grace of a predator, his eyes searching every face, every shadow. He wasn't just looking for the money, he was looking for the honor of his men. In a climactic confrontation near an old French battery, the crew faced off against a band of desperate thieves. The air was split by the roar of an ancient cannon, a relic of a bygone era that Mikhail used to blast the truth into the open. As the bills rained down like green confetti in the tropical wind, the truth was revealed. The theft had been a setup, a tangled web of greed and betrayal that reached back to the base itself. Binghamton arrived, ready to gloat, only to find Mikhail standing over the recovered treasure, his face a mask of cold fury. "The money is here, Captain," Mikhail said, his voice ringing out over the crashing waves. "Every cent, and with it, the proof of who really tried to steal the future of this base." In the aftermath, as the 73 sailed back toward Taratupa, the sun began to set, painting the horizon in shades of bruised purple and burning gold. The crew was silent, the adrenaline of the chase replaced by a weary peace. Mikhail stood at the helm, the wind whipping through his hair. He looked toward the bow where Molly Wilson sat, her gaze fixed on the emerald horizon. He knew that the war was far from over. Cough, cough. There would be more battles, more plots, and more nights filled with the fear of the unknown. But, as he looked at the woman he loved and the men who had become his family, Quentin Mikhail realized that the South Pacific wasn't just a theater of war. It was a place where the human spirit, however flawed, could find a kind of redemption. They were sailors, gypsies, and fools, but they were together. And as the PT-73 cut through the darkening waters, the emerald horizon didn't seem quite so far away. Epilogue. The whisper of the palms. Years later, when the guns had fallen silent and the white sands of Taratupa had returned to the silence of the palms, a story was told. It was a story of a captain who lost his mind, a commander who found his soul, and a love that survived the fire of the Pacific. They say that, on certain nights, when the moon is full and the scent of jasmine is heavy in the air, you can still hear the phantom roar of a PT boat engine. It is the sound of the lost boys, sailing forever toward a horizon where the war never reaches, and where the heart is always home. Captain Binghamton had wanted to say wow, 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 wow. But in the end, the only word that remained was a whisper in the wind, a testament to the chaos and the beauty of the emerald horizon. Tides of Taratupa, a Pacific Farce. Chapter 1. The Storm Before the Admiral. The humid air of the South Pacific hung heavy over the island of Taratupa, a lush green jewel set in an endless expanse of turquoise. On the surface, it was a paradise of palm fronds and frangipani. But inside the headquarters of the United States Navy base, the atmosphere was far more volatile. Captain Wallace B. Binghamton, a man whose blood pressure was as high as the midday sun, sat behind a desk cluttered with requisition forms and half-empty bottles of antacid. "Wow, wow, wow, wow," Binghamton muttered, staring at a supply list that defied logic. "Garter belts. Lieutenant Carpenter, you are the supply officer here. If the nurses need garter belts, then you snap to it. Shake a leg." "Oh, you know what I mean." His aide, Lieutenant Elroy Carpenter, stood at a stiff, trembling attention. "Sir, Don't sir me," Binghamton barked. "Everything is on my shoulders. The war, the logistics, the sinks in the Petty Officers Club backing up. I'm the commanding officer here, not a plumber. And now, to top it all off, I get a message from a pal at conflict. Admiral Rafferty is arriving today on a sneak inspection." Carpenter's face went pale. "Iron Pants Rafferty? Here?" "Exactly. That old bloodhound will be nosing around every corner of this mess. Do you realize the state of this place? It's a disgrace, a carnival, and the ringleader of it all is that saltwater pirate, Mikhail." As if summoned by the mention of his name, the distant roar of a PT boat engine echoed across the lagoon. It was the PT-73, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Quentin Mikhail. To Binghamton, Mikhail was a thorn in his side. To the men, he was a legend. Mikhail and his crew of cutthroats